What's up everybody, Aditya Mahajan here and welcome back to yet another YouTube video. So in today's video, we'll be looking at Python interview questions. So till now we have covered like Node.js, C++, Android and Django top interview questions which could be asked. So in this video, we'll be looking at Python. So I'm making these videos so that it would make revision easier for your coding test or your interviews. Okay, so in this video, we'll be covering like basic questions, then advanced question, some object-oriented programming questions related to Python. Then we'll be looking at two basic libraries, that is Pandas and Numpy. Then finally, we'll look at some Python programming examples. So without further ado, let's get started. Python was developed by Guido van Rossum and was first released on February 20, 1991. I'm hearing this for the first time. Let me know in comments who all are getting to know this for the first time. So it is most widely used and loved programming language and interpreted in nature due to the interpreter, flexibility of incorporating dynamic semantics. It is free and open source with very simple and clean syntax. So it helps developers to develop very easily and also supports object oriented programming, which is like for general purpose programming for anything. Also, due to a simplistic nature and multiple functionalities in as few lines of code as possible, it's growing tremendously, and we can use it for ML, AI, web dev, web scraping, etc., and various other domains to due to its ability to support powerful computations using powerful libraries. So there is quite a lot of demand for it in India and all over the world. So these are the things that we'll be covering. So let's get started with some basic questions. So first question is, what is Python and what are benefits of using Python? So it is a high level interpreted and general purpose programming language, and it can be used to build almost any type of application with right tools / libraries. Now additionally, Python supports objects, modules, threads, exceptional handling and automatic memory management, which helps in modeling real world problems and building application to solve these problems. Now benefits are that it is general purpose programming and has simple and easy to learn syntax with very great readability, therefore reduces the cost of program maintenance. Moreover, the language is capable of scripting and is completely open source and supports third-party packages, encouraging modularity and code reuse. So it is its high-level data structure combined with dynamic typing and dynamic binding attract a huge community of developer and rapid application development and deployment. Moving on to the next question, what is dynamically typed language? So before we understand what is dynamically typed language, we should learn about what typing is. So typing refers to type checking in programming languages. It is strongly, so Python is a strongly typed language. So in strongly typed such as Python, 1 plus 2 will result in type error since these languages don't allow for type coercion. How is it pronounced?
Coercion.
Coercion. I was right. Okay. Coercion, implicit conversions of data types. On the other hand, a weakly typed language such as JavaScript will simply output 1, 2 as a result. Type checking can be done at two stages, that is static and dynamic. So data types can be checked before execution and data types can be checked after execution. So Python is an interpreter language, execute each statement line by line, and thus type checking is done on the fly during execution. Hence Python is dynamically typed language. What is an interpreted language? Interpreted language executes its statement line by line, and language such as Python, JavaScript, R, PHP, Ruby are prime examples of interpreted languages. Programs written in interpreted languages run directly from the source code and no intermediary action is taken, like for example C++ where we compile C++ or Java where we compile the code initially. What is PEP 8 and why is it important? So PEP stands for Python Enhancement Proposal. A PEP is an official design document providing information to Python community or describing a new feature for Python or its processes. So PEP is especially important since it documents the style guidelines for Python code. Apparently, contributing to the Python open source community requires you to follow these style guidelines sincerely and strictly, which helps in faster development. Now, what is scope in Python? So every object in Python function within a scope. Every object in Python functions within a scope. A scope is a block of code where an object in Python remains relevant. Namespaces uniquely identify all objects inside a program. However, these namespaces also have a scope defined for them. where you could use their objects without any prefix. A few examples of this scope created during code execution in Python are as follows, that is local scope, global, module level, and outermost. So refers to the local object available in the current function. Global refers to the object available throughout the code execution since their inception, that is during from the start. Module level scope refers to the global object of current module accessible in the program, so they would be in that particular module or package itself only. Outermost scope refers to all built-in names callable in program. The objects in this scope are searched last to find the name reference. So local scope objects can be synced with global objects, global scope objects using keywords such as global. Moving on to the next question, question number 6. What are lists and tuples? What is the key differences between two? So list and tuple are both sequence data types that can store collection of objects in Python. The objects stored in both can have different data types, and list can be represented with square brackets while tuples with parentheses. Now the real difference between two, the main difference is that lists are mutable. Tuples on the other hands are immutable, that is they cannot be changed, whereas we can change lists. So this means that lists can be modified, appended, or sliced on the go, but tuples remain constant and cannot be modified in any manner. You can run the following example on Python IDE to confirm the difference. So we are creating a tuple and a list with almost same values, and we are printing the tuple, each first element of list and tuple, and then we are trying to change both of them. So if we try to change the tuple, it will give an error, whereas if we try to change the list, it will take it easily. Moving on to the next question, question number 7. What are common built-in data types in Python? Now, there are several built-in data types in Python, although Python doesn't require data types to be defined explicitly. That is, you can directly define a variable name and you can start using it by assigning it to something. During variable declarations, type errors are likely to occur if knowledge of data types and their compatibility with each other are neglected. So Python provides a type function or isInstance function to check the types of these variables that are generated. So these data types can be grouped into following categories: none type, numeric type, sequence type, mapping type, set type, modules, and callable types. Okay, so let's start with none type. So the keyword represent null values in Python. The Boolean equality operator can be performed using these none type objects. So type is none, represent null value in Python. Numeric types, there are 3 distinct numeric types: integer, floating point numbers, and complex numbers. Additionally, booleans are subtypes of this integer. So int, store, integer, literal including hex, octal, binary, float using decimal values or exponent sign. Then we have complex numbers where we can store them, the complex and real part, sorry, the imaginary and real part in a plus ib format. Then we have boolean, stores true or false values. So the standard library also include fractions to store rational numbers and decimal to store floating point numbers with user defined precision. Moving on to sequence type, according to Python docs, there are 3 basic sequence types, that is list, tuple, and range objects. So sequence types have n and not n operators defined for traversing in their element. So these operators share the same priority as comparison operators. So we have list, mutable sequence used to store collection of items. Tuple, same as list, but they are just immutable. So these are given by square bracket list. Tuple is by parentheses. Then we have range, represent an immutable sequence of numbers generated during execution. Then we have str, immutable sequence of Unicode code point to store textual data. So standard library also includes additional type of processing, that is binary data such as byte array, bytes, memory view, and text string such as str. Now then we have next type as mapping types. A mapping object can map hashable values to random objects in Python. So mapping objects are mutable, and there is currently only one standard mapping type, that is dictionary. And it is stored comma separated list of key value pairs. Next type is set types. So it is type of like mapping is like map, unordered or ordered map in C++, and whereas with set we have STL set, unordered or ordered both. So currently in Python we have built-in set types to be set and frozen set dot set. is mutable and support method like add and remove. Dot frozen set type is immutable and can be modified after creation. So set is mutable, frozen set is immutable. So both are hashable. Set is mutable, thus cannot be used as a key for a dictionary. On the other hand, frozen set is immutable and thus hashable, and can be used as dictionary key or as an element of another set. Next, we have modules. So module is an additional built-in type supported by Python interpreter. It supports one special operation, that is attribute access. So like mymod.myObject, where mymod is module and myObject references a name defined to m symbol table. Now the module symbol table resides in very special attribute of module underscore underscore dict underscore underscore, but direct assignment to this module is neither possible nor recommended. Now callable types are types in which function call can be applied. So these can be user defined function, instance method, generator function, and some other built-in functions, methods, and classes. So you can refer to the documentation that is given. Question number 8. What is pass in Python? So the pass keywords represent a null operation in Python. It is generally used to purpose of filling up empty blocks of code which may execute during runtime but has not been written yet. So without pass statement, the following code we may run into some errors during execution. So here my empty function does not have anything except pass, and when we call that function, so this would work. But if we do not write pass, in that case what would happen is we'll get an indentation error. So it is expecting something in this function, but we are not giving anything to it. So if we are not giving anything to it, so at least we need to have a pass for it. Moving on to question number 9. What are modules and packages in Python? So Python packages and Python modules are two mechanisms that allow for modular programming. So the advantages: first is simplicity, helps you to focus on relatively small portion of problem at hand, and it makes development easier and faster. Maintainability, so designed to enforce logical boundaries between different problem domains. So if they are written in manner that reduces interdependency, it is likely that modification in a module might impact other parts of programs. Then we have reusability. Functions defined in module can easily be reused by other parts of application. Then we have scoping. Modules typically define a separate namespace, which helps avoid confusion between identifiers from other parts of the program. So modules in general are simply Python files, that is with .py extension, and can have set of functions, classes, variable defined and implemented. So that can be imported and initialized once using the import statement. If partial functionality is needed, then import the required class or function using from that particular package. Import what you want to import. Then next what we have is packages. So packages allow for hierarchical structuring of module namespaces using dot notation. As modules help avoid clashes between global variable names, in similar manner packages help avoid clashes between module names. Creating a package is easy since it makes use of system's inherent file structure. So just stuff the modules into a folder and then you have it, the folder name as a package name. Importing a module or its content from this package requires the package name as prefix to the module name joined by a dot. So you technically import the package as well, but alas, it doesn't import the modules within the package in the local namespace. Thus it is practically useless. Moving on to question number 10. What are global, protected and private attributes in Python? So these are access specifiers. If you have watched the C++ video, then this would be pretty obvious. So global variables are public variables that are defined in global scope, and to use variable in global scope inside function, we can use global keyword. Protected attributes are attribute defined with an underscore prefix to their identifier. Example, underscore Sarah. They can still be accessed and modified from outside the class. They are defined in, but a responsible developer should refrain from doing so. Private attributes are attributes with double underscore prefix to their identifier. Example, underscore underscore unch. They cannot be accessed or modified from outside directly and will result in an attribute error if such attempt is made. Moving on to next question. What is the use of self in Python? So self is used to represent the instance of the class. With this keyword, you can access the attribute and methods of class in Python. So it binds attributes with given arguments. Self is used in different places and often thought to be a keyword, but unlike C++, self is not a keyword in Python. So what is underscore underscore init underscore underscore? So these are two underscores at start and at the end. So is a constructor method in Python and is automatically called to allocate memory when a new object or instance is created. All classes have underscore underscore init underscore underscore method associated. So I'll just call it init. Okay. So method associated with them. So it helps in distinguishing methods and attributes of a class from local variables. For example, we have a class named as student, then we have a constructor underscore underscore. I'll just call it init. Then we have self, then some parameters, and we are just setting those. So these are the variables inside the class, whereas these are the parameters that we got. Okay, then we are creating an object for this class with following values. Moving on to question number 13, what is break, continue, and pass in Python? So break statement terminates the loop immediately and control flows to the statement after the body of the loop. The continue statements terminate the current iteration of the statement, skips the rest of the code during the current iteration, and control flows to the next iteration of the loop. Pass, as explained above, the pass keyword in Python is generally used to fill empty blocks. Is similar to an empty statement represented by a semicolon in languages such as Java, C++, or JavaScript. So they have given this example. So we have created a list. So this list basically contains some numbers in it, and we are iterating through that. So what pass would happen is, like, if we are not implementing anything, we are just filling up empty spaces. Then we have like break condition. So if p is equal to 0, in that case we are just exiting out of this loop. So the continue basically states that if this condition is satisfied, then we are not executing print p, and at the end we are just printing the current. Moving on to question number 14, what are unit tests in Python? So unit test is unit testing framework of Python, and testing means testing different components of software separately. So can you think about why unit testing is important? So imagine a scenario: you are building a software that uses three components A, B, and C. Now suppose your software breaks at a point of time. How will you find which component was responsible for breaking the software? Maybe it was component A that failed, which in turn failed component B, and this actually failed the software. There can be many such combinations. So this is why it is necessary to test each and every component properly, so that we know which component might be highly responsible for failure of software. What is docstring in Python? So documentation string or docstring is a multi-line string used to document a specific code segment. So the docstring should describe what function or method does. What is slicing? So as name suggests, slicing is taking parts of dividing it. So syntax for slicing is start. So we basically do square brackets, and then we have colons separating three variables, that is start, stop, and step. So start is starting index from where to slice a list or a tuple. Stop is the ending index or where to stop. So step is a number of steps to jump. Okay, so it is kind of like the third last loop that we do, I equal to I plus 2 in for loop, etc. Default value of start is 0 and stop is number of items. Step is 1. Then slicing can be done in string, array, list, and tuple. So they have given an example. So there is a list what we have. Then we are printing from start to 1. We are stopping at the end, and then we are doing it in increments of 2. So we'll be output 2, 4, 6, and 8. So explain how can you make a Python script executable on Unix or Linux. I think this should work in Linux as well. So script file must begin with hash, exclamatory mark, and then user, bin, and environment space Python. Question number 18, what is difference between Python arrays and lists? So the only difference between those is that arrays expect same data type elements in the complete array, whereas in list we can have elements with different data types. So in arrays we should have homogeneous, whereas list can take heterogeneous. And arrays is just a wrapper around C language arrays and consumes less memory than list. So list has a different advantage of consuming more memory. For example, if we import array.array, it takes first parameter as data type. So I represent integer and we are taking a list of integers. So this would work fine. Whereas if we try to input a string in that list, then we will get an error. So list takes it very easily, that we can see. Moving on to some advanced interview questions for Python. Question number 19, how is memory managed in Python? So when we say memory in Python, we have two things. One is the Python memory manager and second is the garbage collector. So memory management is mainly done by Python memory manager and it is allocated in the form of private heap space. Now all the objects are stored in the form of heap being private, so we cannot access them. But Python provides some core API functions to work upon the private heap space. Now the garbage collection is used to recycle the unused memory from the private heap space. So this is the basic diagram how we work upon that. Is we use interpreter, and interpreter in turn creates manages memory with the help of private heap space with the help of memory manager, and there is garbage collector which frees the objects. Now, what are Python namespaces and why are they used? Namespace in Python ensures that object names in program are unique and can be used without any conflict. Now, Python implements these namespace as dictionaries with name as key mapped to corresponding object as value. Now, this allows multiple namespaces to use same name and map it to separate object. So first is a local namespace and includes local names inside the function and is temporarily created and it gets cleared when function is returned. Next we have global namespace. Now this includes names from various imported packages, modules that are currently being used in the project. Now the namespace is created when the package is imported in the scripts and lasts till that script is completely executed. Then we have built-in namespaces, which are like core Python and built-in names for various types of execution. Now, the lifecycle of namespace depends upon the scope of the object they are mapped to. If scope ends, then the lifecycle also comes to an end. The lifecycle of namespace also comes to an end. So we cannot access outer namespaces within the inner namespaces. For example, at the very inner level, we have local, then we have enclosed, global, and built-in. Question number 21, what is the scope resolution in Python? Sometimes object within the scope have same name but function differently. In such cases, scope resolution come into play in Python automatically. For example, if we take a look at math and C math, they have some functions in common like log10, acos, exponential. So to resolve this ambiguity, we need to mention the module name. So that is math.exponential or cmath.exponential. So they have given an example where they have initially created a global variable with value of 10, and inside the function they are creating another variable. So this is completely local and independent of the global variable. So if we print 10 here, in that they are just printing. So initially the value is 10 of temp. When we call function, we output 20, which specifies that it is new, and which is specified as we print outside temp, then it again gives 10. Okay, so that is what basically it says. Like the function call didn't change the value of temp globally, so Python draws a clear line between global and local variables and treating them completely separate. To change that, what we can do is we can create a global temp, and then on changing that, we actually change the global variable. Moving on to question number 22, what are decorators in Python? So they are basically functions which add functionality to existing function in Python without changing the function structure of the function itself. So they are used with the @ symbol and the decorator name, and they are executed in bottom up fashion. So we'll look at that, what that means. So here we mainly have a function called as def hello, and it just returns a string hello world. Now in this we are taking two iterators, splitter decorator and lowercase decorator. I said iterator, it is decorator. So lowercase decorator would be executed first and then followed by splitter decorator. So in that we have nested functions. The nested function is called as wrapper. So this function basically says that whatever the function it is defined to, it will take that function and then do some post processing. So in this case we are just splitting that and returning that. Similarly in lowercase we are just doing a lowercase. Now one important thing about this is that beside adding functionality to output of the method, we can also pass arguments to that. So for functions can further modify these arguments before passing it to function itself. The inner nested function, that is wrapper, plays a significant role here. So it is implemented to enforce encapsulation and thus keeps itself hidden from global scope. For example, here we have a say hello function which takes name and name1 and name2, and we have initialized a decorator which takes two arguments. So here we are capitalizing the both arguments before passing it to the function. So that's in short. We are, even though we are passing small letter, they are capitalized. Okay. Moving on to question number 23, what are dict and list comprehension? So these are very similar to decorators, which are like syntactic sugars, which helps in build altering and filtered list dictionary sets from a given list of given list dictionary or sets. So using comprehensions, it is used to write more clean and smaller code, which is, I mean, sometimes it's a bit difficult to read, but it saves a lot of time while coding. Now, some of the examples that they have given is where we can use them is first is mathematical operation on entire list. For example, we have a list containing following elements and we need a squared list or squared dictionary. So what we can do is, this is a kind of for loop syntax, and then we have an operation that we need to do. So we need square, so we are doing x squared, and then we are doing for every element x in my list. So this would basically output the squared of all elements in the list. If we need a dictionary, then this is the format, that is what is the key and then what is the value, and same the for loop kind of syntax. If we need to perform conditional filtering operations on the entire list, then we do something like this. So initial part is very similar. So just after that, what we do, we put an if condition with whatever operation or condition that we want to put. Similarly, for dictionary, we add curly braces, and in that way we can do conditional filtering. We can also combine multiple lists into one. So one of the example here is that, let's say we have two lists A and B, and we need sum of them. So we can basically do a for loop for every element x and y in list A and B, and then we are just printing the sum. Okay, so sorry, not printing, we are adding both of them. Similarly, if we need to create a tuple of lists, then what we can do is we can do similarly x and y, and then we can do for x in A and for y in B. So that is nested iterators. Also, what we can do is we can flatten a multidimensional list. So similar approach of nested iterator as above can be applied to flatten a multidimensional list or work upon its inner elements. So here we have list of list, which is kind of like a matrix. So what we do is this is the thing what we need in the final output. Then we have a first for loop and second for loop kind of syntax, which is basically mentioning that from my list we are taking the first list, and for every list we are taking the first element or the element in that, and then we are just outputting that. So list comprehensions have same effect as map method in other languages. They follow up the mathematical set builder notation rather than map and filter functions in Python. Question number 24, what is lambda in Python and why is it used? So it is an anonymous function which can accept any number of arguments but can only have one single expression. So it is used in situation where we require an anonymous function for short period of time and we would not be using it afterwards. So it can be used in two ways. First is we can assign lambda function to a variable. So here we have a lambda function and expression is like this, and then we assign it to a variable name. So when we call that variable name, we pass the parameters and we are in this case just printing it. Similarly, we can wrap lambda functions inside another function. So here we have a function called as my wrapper and we are passing n to it, and then we are creating another lambda function to it, which is getting returned from this function. So this function takes we are assigning it to some other variable and then we are calling that particular thing. Moving on to next question, question number 25. How do you copy an object in Python? So in Python, equal operator does not copy that object. It instead creates a binding between existing and the target variable name. To create copies in an object, we need to use the copy module, and there are two ways for doing so. That is, first is a shallow copy, which is a bitwise copy of an object. So the copied object created has an exact copy of values in the original object. So the values which are present in the original will also be present in the shallow copy. But if there are values I mean, there are references to other object, then those only references are attached, not the complete references values are copied. Okay, so just the references address for the same are copied. Whereas in deep copy, copies of all values recursively from source to target object. That is, it even duplicates the object referenced by the source object. To understand that, let us look at the example. So we are importing copy and deep copy from copy module. Here we are creating a list, and in that we have a nested list also in list 1. Now, if we create a shallow copy of list 1, in that case, if we just change the, let's say we change this 4 to 7, then it gets changed only in the new copy. Whereas if we change something in the nested list, which is just a reference, so it would be reflected in both the original and the new list. So for example, when we changed 4, then it is not reflected in the original, whereas when we appended something which is reference to that, then 6 is appended in both of them, that is in old as well as in new. Whereas what happens in deep copy is the complete copy is created and both of them are independent. Now we deep copy the list 1 and list 3, and when we change the 4 to 8, the original list always has 4 whatever happens. And similarly in the nested list also, which is a reference, that also is not present in the original one. Moving on to question number 26, what is difference between xrange and range in Python? So both of them are very similar in functionality. Both generate sequence of integers, with only difference that range returns a Python list, whereas xrange returns a xrange object. So how does that make it different? So it is basically like when range is called, we generate a static list, whereas in xrange we do not generate a static list. It creates the values on the go. So this technique is commonly used with an object type generator and has been termed as yielding. So yielding is crucial in applications where there is memory constraint. So creating a static list as in range can lead to memory error wherever there are memory constraint, that is memory is less, while in xrange can handle it optimally by using just enough memory for the generator, which is significantly less in comparison. For example, here we have xrange. So I mean, we cannot see any difference by just looking at the code. All of the things would be similar only. Okay, so they have just given how xrange can be used, what are the parameters. But now what happens in Python 3.0 and next version is that xrange is deprecated. Now range, whatever xrange does, same thing is done by range also. So it was different when in Python 2, xrange and range had different implementations. Moving on to question number 27, what is pickling and unpickling? So Python library offers a feature of serialization out of the box. So serialization of an object refers to transforming it into format that can be stored. That is, we just convert that particular object into a sequence of or list of string, for example, something like that, which is very easy to store. So as to able to deserialize it later on to obtain the original object. So we can just deserialize the saved file and then use that object again. So here pickle module is used. So pickling is the name of serialization process, and any object in Python can be serialized into a byte stream and dumped into file in the memory. Now the process of pickling is compact, but pickle objects can be compressed further. Moreover, pickle keeps tracks of object it has serialized, and serialization is portable across different versions. Now the function used is pickle.dump. For unpickling, it is a complete reverse of pickling. That is, it deserializes the byte stream to recreate the object stored in the file and loads the object into the memory. Now the function used is pickle.load. Now the Python has another more primitive serialization module called as Marshal. Sniper in Valorant. Gamers know what I'm saying. So which exists primarily to support .pyc files in Python and differs slightly from the pickle. So this is a diagrammatic representation. So when we have Python object, to save it, we do pickle.dump, that is pickling, and to use that byte stream again into Python object, we do unpickling, that is pickle.load. Question number 28, what are generators in Python? So generator are function that return an iterable collection of items. one at a time in set manner. So generators in general are used to create iterators with a different approach. So they employ the use of yield keyword rather than return to return a generator object. So the example they have given is for a Fibonacci generator. So we have a FIB function which takes in how many numbers we want to create in the Fibonacci series. So this logic is simple, but in place of returning, we are just using a yield keyword. Okay, so to create that generator object, we do x equal to function name and whatever the parameter it is taking. So it would basically have a list of iterators, and we can use it with the next. There will be underscore underscore before and after the next for using this, and we will get every element for one particular iterator. So you can also iterate in this way, that is, while creating an object we can just put it in the for loop, and for every I we are just printing that. Question number 29 is, what is Python path in Python? So Python path is an environment variable which you can set to additional directories where Python will look for modules or packages. So this is especially useful in maintaining Python libraries which you do not wish to install in global default location. Question number 30, what is the use of help and dir functions? So help function in Python is used to display documentation of module, classes, function, keywords, etc. So if parameter is not passed, then an interactive help utility is launched on the console. Now dir function tries to return a valid list of attributes and methods of object it is called upon. It behaves differently with different objects as it aims to produce the most relevant data rather than the complete information. For module slash library objects, it returns a list of attributes contained in that module. For class objects, it returns a list of all valid attributes and base attributes. With no arguments parts, it returns a list of attributes in the current scope. Moving on to question number 31, what is different between .py file and .pyc files? So .py files contains the source code, whereas .pyc file contain bytecode of the program, and we get bytecode after compiling the source code file, that is .py file. And one more thing is that .pyc files are not created for all the files. It is only generated for the files for which you import in other files. Okay, so before executing a Python program, Python interpreter checks for the compiled files. If they are present, the virtual machine executes directly the .pyc files. If not found, then it checks for py files, it compiles it, and then Python virtual machine executes it. So having a .pyc file saves the compilation time. Moving on to question number 32, how is Python interpreted? So Python as language is not interpreted or compiled. Interpreted or compiled is the property of the implementation. So Python is a bytecode. Interpreted generally, so that is set of interpreter readable instructions. So source code is a file with .py extension. Now Python compiles the source code to a set of instruction for the virtual machine to execute it. The Python interpreter is an implementation of virtual machine, of that particular virtual machine. This intermediate format is called as bytecode. Now .py source code is first compiled to give .pyc, which is a bytecode. Then bytecode can be interpreted by the official C Python or JIT, that is just-in-time compiler, compiled by PyPy. Question number 33, how are arguments passed by value or by reference in Python? So pass by value is actually copy of actual objects, and changing the value will not change the original object. Similarly, pass by reference is that we are actually passing the reference of the original object, that is, whenever we change that reference, the original objects will get changed. So in Python, arguments are passed by reference, so changing them would change. For example, here in append number we are passing an array, and in that we are appending a number 4. So we create an array with values 1 2 3. Initially we just have 1 2 3 when we append number, and in that case, and when we print after that, we are getting 1 2 3 4. Question number 34, what are iterators in Python? So an iterator is an object. It remembers its state, that is where it is during iterations. See code below to see how. They have given an example. So underscore underscore iter underscore underscore function or method initializes an iterator. So it has next method with underscores previous and after. 2 methods which return next item in iteration and points to the next element. Upon reaching the end of iterable object, must return stop iteration exception. So it is also self-iterable. Iterators are object which we can iterate over iterable objects like list, string, etc. For example, here we have a class array list, and in this we have a constructor, then we have a next and iterator functions, which are for basically like iterator. So iterator will basically assign its position to be 0, that is pointing to the start, and whenever we have next, in that case we are like checking if its length is inside the bounds of that particular object, that is if it is a list, if it is on last pointer or first or in between, something like that, or else we raise an exception. So we are creating an object of that array list class, and then we are creating an iterator of that array object. So whenever, so it is like iter function, iter, and it would basically have, whenever we use next to that iterator, we'll get the next element. So if we are at end of the list, then we are thrown an exception. Moving on to question number 35, explain how to delete a file in Python. So we can use os.remove. So we import operating system OS, and then we have a function called remote, and then the file name along with extension. Explain split and join functions in Python. So split is used to split a string based on a delimiter. It could be a space, it could be a comma, it could be anything. So whereas join function to join a list of string based on delimiter to give a single string. So delimiter is anything whatever we provided. So for example, they have given a string. So here initially we are splitting with spaces. So we just remove that and create a list, that is this is a and string, and whenever we join with delimiter space, we get the string back again. So what does star args and star kw args mean? So star args is a special syntax used in a function definition to pass variable length arguments. Okay, so here it would basically mean that there could be any number of arguments after this. Now star means variable length, and args is a name used by convention. You can use any other, so it does not matter you use argv, arg, or anything, whatever you want. Now here we are like, this is just a simple multiply function. We are multiplying first two arguments, and then we are iterating over this list of elements and then multiplying it, and we are just returning that. Star kw args is a special syntax used in function definition to pass variable length keyword arguments. So here difference was variable length argument, variable length keyword arguments. Here kw args is just a convention. So this name is also a convention. We can use anything. Keyword argument means a variable that has a name when function passed to it. So it is actually a dictionary of variable names and its values. For example, here we have tail arguments where we have star kw args, and it would basically be a kind of dictionary sort of thing. So for that kw args dot items, we are iterating for its key value. So we just print what key is and what is its value. So this will iterate for all elements in that. Now here we are just calling that function and the arguments that we have. So output would be as follows. Question number 38, what are negative indices and why are they used? So negative indices are indexes from the end of the list or tuple or string, whatever data type we are using. So array of -1 means that last element of the array. For example, here we have array 1 to 6. So if we put array of -1, we'll get 6, array of -2 will get 5. Next section we have Python object oriented programming question. So question number 39, how do you create a Python class? To create Python class, we use class keyword, and one of the example is that we give the class name, and there is this init as a constructor that we have, and self is present for most of the functions that we have, and then we have whatever arguments that we need to pass. So this is used to initialization of some variables inside the class. To instantiate or create an object from the class created above, what we do is we give the class name and whatever parameters that we need to initialize, so that those are in the constructor. and then we assign it to an object. Now to access the name attribute, we just call the attribute using dot operator as shown below. So to use this employee name, we just use the object dot the variable. To create methods inside the class, we include the methods under the scope of the class as shown below. So we have a method. So basically method is a function inside the class. So the self parameter in the init and introduce function represent the reference of to the current class instance, which is used for accessing attributes and methods of that class. The self parameter has to be first parameter of any method defined inside the class. The method of the class interview bit employee can be accessed as shown below. So we can use the object dot the function name similar to the variable name. So the overall program should look like this: the class name, then the constructor with some parameters, then we have some methods which are functions inside the class. We do some operation to create object for that class. We just give the class name, the parameters, and then create the object. For using variable or function, we just do object name dot variable or object name dot function. Question number 40: how does inheritance work in Python? Explain it with an example. So inheritance gives the power to a class to access all attributes and methods of another class. It aids in code reusability and helps developer to maintain application without redundant code. The class inheriting from another class is a child class, or also called as derived class. The class from which a child class derives the members are called parent class or the superclass. Now Python support different kinds of inheritance. First is single inheritance, that is child class derives from member of one parent class. So this is the type of single inheritance. One class is derived from other one parent class. For example, here we have one parent class and we have a function inside it, par function. To extend that particular, what we do is we have child class and then we pass the parent class as a kind of like argument, and then we have some functions inside that class. To create a object for that, it is very similar to other classes, that is we give the class name and the object, and we can use both the functions, that is in the child class and even in the parent class. For multi-level inheritance, the members of parent class A are inherited by child class, which is then inherited by another child class B. The features of base class and the derived class are further inherited into a new derived class C. Here A is grandfather class of C. So here we have base class, then intermediary class which extends class A, and then we have the grandchild class, that is class C derived from B. So C would be able to access B elements and A elements as well. An example of this multi-level inheritance is, let's say we have a class A, then we have a class B which extends from class A, and then we have another child class C which extends from class B. So in A and B we just had constructors, and in those we have variable names A name and B name, etc. Similarly, in C we have a constructor which has C, B and A, all the three names, and for like we can just assign C here and call the constructor of B to assign B and A. Similarly, in B we can do is we can assign B and call constructor of A to assign the A name. Then we have also a function called as display names, which would basically print all of these three. Now for creating object, it is very similar. Class name, arguments, and then creating an object, and for using we just use object name dot that particular variable or function. Third is what we have is multiple inheritance. This is achieved when one child class derives members from more than one parent class. All features of parent class are inherited in the child class. So C will extend from A as well as from B. So it will have all the properties of A and B. Example for this is we have a parent class, parent 1, and then we have another parent class, parent 2. And in both of those we have parent 1 function, parent 2 function. And in the child class we are extending from parent 1 as well as from parent 2. In this we have child function, which would basically call both of these function, parent 1 and parent 2. Object creation is very similar to that. Moving on, next we have hierarchical inheritance. When a parent class is derived by more than one child class, it is called hierarchical inheritance. So here B, C and D would inherit from parent class A. For example, here we have A as the parent class, which is derived by B and C. Okay, so in this we have some functions. Object creation is also very similar. So this is example. I think it is explanatory sufficient. I mean, very easy to understand. Moving on to question number 41. How do you access parent members in child class? Following are the ways by which we can access parent members. By using parent class name, you can use the name of parent class to access attributes as shown in the example below. So let's say we have a parent class and we have a child class which is extending from parent class. In that, in both of them we have constructors, and we also have a function called as display in child class. Now for accessing parent class variables, what we do is we just use the parent class name and then the variable, and this is simple instantiation of object of the child class and then using the function display. We can also do that, access the parent variables or function with the help of super. The parent class members can be accessed in child class using the super keyword. So here we have a parent class, the constructor for it. Similarly, we have a child class, the constructor for it. And for calling the constructor of parent class, what we do is we just use a super keyword and then pass the current child class name and then self object to call the constructor. And here we instantiate, not instantiate, but save the variable name, whatever parameter that was given. Similarly, we have a display function, and then we can do just self.name and self.age. This is instantiation of the object, very similar to the previous what we saw. Question number 42. Are access specifier used in Python? Python does not make use of access specifier specifically, like private, public, protected. However, it does not derive this from any variables. It has concept of limiting the behavior of variables by making use of single or double underscore. That is, single is for protected and double underscore is for private as prefix to the variable names. By default, the variables without prefix underscores are public. For example, protected members are as follows. For every variable name, before that variable name, we assign a underscore that would specify that those are the protected members. So if we have private members, then we do double underscores previous to the variable name. In the constructor are very similar to that, and in public member, we do not add anything, like no underscore is present inside that. Is it possible to call parent class without its instance creation? Yes, it is possible if the base class is instantiated by other child classes or if base class is a static method. So there are two possibilities, that is, base class should be either instantiated by any of the child class or it should be a static method. How is an empty class created in Python? So an empty class does not have any members defined in it. So it can be created by using pass keyword. So this is what we did during functions. So the pass command does nothing in Python. We can create objects for this class outside the class. For example, we have a class and in that we just do a pass. Even the object creation is possible, but it does not do anything. Moving on to question number 45. Differentiate between new and override modifiers. So the new modifier is used to instruct the compiler to use new implementation and not the base class function. The override modifier is used for overriding a base class function inside the child class. That is, the base class would also have that function, but we do not want to use that implementation. We just override that to give some new implementation inside the child class. Question number 46. Why is finalize used? So finalize method is used for freeing up the unmanaged resources and clean up before the garbage collection method is invoked. This helps in performing memory management tasks. Question number 47. What is init method in Python? So init method works similar to constructors in Java or C++. The method runs as soon as an object is instantiated. It is useful for initializing any attributes or default behaviors of the object at the time of instantiation. For example, we have interview bit employee class. In this we have a init method or constructor method where we have an argument. So this is the same example that they gave for the first question of the oops question. Moving on to question number 48. How will you check if a class is a child of another class? So this is done by using a method called as isSubclass function. provided by Python. So this method tells us if any class is a child of another class by returning true or false accordingly. For example, we have a parent class which does not do anything, so we use it pass. And similarly, we have a child class which is extended from parent class. Now we can do is we can use each subclass function or method which takes in parameter like child and parent. So if they are child and parent, we return true. Now the sequence is important in this. Okay, so if we do reverse, then it would return false because parent is not derived from child. We can check if an object is an instance of class by making use of isInstance method as well. So we have two objects, that is of child and parent. Like these are the same classes. We have created objects for both, and we can use isInstance of object and then the child. Moving on to libraries related questions. So first we have Pandas library. What do you know about Pandas? So Pandas is an open source Python based library used in data manipulation applications requiring high performance. So the name is derived from panel data having multidimensional data. This was developed in 2008 by this person and was developed for data analysis. So pandas are useful in performing 5 major steps of data analysis, that is load the data, clean/manipulate it, prepare it, model it, and analyze the data. Question number 50, define pandas data frame. So a data frame is a 2D mutable and tabular structure for representing data labeled with axes, that is rows and columns. So syntax for creating data frame is that we just import pandas with alias whatever you want. So pd is general, so data frame is equal to pd.data frame, and then we have some parameters like what is the data, what are indexes, columns, t type, etc. Now data represent various forms like series, map. We can create from any data structure. Rest of the things are optional. So index represent an index to row labels, and column represent column labels, what name you want to give, and then d type represent data type of each column, which is also an optional. Question number 51, how do you combine the different pandas data frames? So the data frames can combine using following approaches. So the first one is append method. So this is used to stack data frame horizontally, that is the rows would be appended. We just do data frame 1 dot append data frame 2. So concat method, this is used to stack data frames vertically. This is best used when data frames have the same columns and similar fields. So syntax is that we do pd.concat the two data frames, stacking vertically if they have some similar columns. Then we have join method. This is used for extracting data from various data frames having one or more common columns. So we do df1.join df2. Next question is, can you create a series from a dictionary object in pandas? So it is asking like if we can create a series from dictionary object in pandas. So one dimensional array is capable for storing different data types is called a series. So one dimensional array which has various other formats like various other data types. So we can create pandas series from a dictionary object as shown below. We import pandas, we create a sample dictionary, and we do pd.series and whatever dictionary that is present. So if we print that, we can get that series object. We have also printed the data type, which is float 64. If an index is not specified in input method, then the keys of dictionary are sorted in ascending order for constructing the index. In case the index is passed, then the values of index label will be extracted from dictionary. Question number 53, how will you identify and deal with missing values in data frame? Now in this we can use various function like the one is isNull or isNA methods. So we can do like missing data equal to df dot the data frame that we have isNull, and then we can sum them, or we can do any other operation. So isNA can also be used in place of is. We can handle missing values by either replacing the values in the columns with 0. So we can just do whatever the column we want to take of that particular data frame, and it will replace all the nulls with 0. or replacing it with the mean value of the column. That is, if we do not want to take them to be 0, we can fill in those value with the average. So what we can do is we can just do whatever column we want to do, then we can take that column dot fill na, and we can this is basically finding the mean of that particular column. So we are taking the column and taking the mean and filling it with wherever we do not have anything. Question number 54. What do you understand by re-indexing in Pandas? So re-indexing is a process of confirming a data frame to a new index with optional filling logic. So if the values are missing in previous index, then nan/na is placed in that location. A new object is returned unless a new index is produced that is equivalent to the current one. The copy value is set to false. This is also used for changing the index of rows and columns in the data frame. Question number 55 states how to add new columns in Pandas data frame. So we can do this with the help of series first or with the help of other columns in the same data frame. So in this example, we are importing Pandas. We are creating a dictionary with two columns, that is first and second, with some values and some not. So these are the indexes. And in this we are creating a data frame from this dictionary. Now to add a third column, what we are doing is we are using pandas.series, and in that we are passing the list of elements or the values that we need to pass for indices a, b and c. So a, b and c, these are the row names. Next, what we have other way we can do is we can use some other columns of the same data frame. So this should be df, not info. So we can use first and the third column to do some operation and get the get the result. So if you want to see the output, this is the one. Now initially when we print this first df for adding the third column, we were just adding 10, 20 and 30 for abc rows. So we are getting this. For rest we are getting nan. Similarly, for adding the fourth column, what we are doing is we are adding first and the third column. So first is 1 and third column is 10. So we are adding 10 plus 1 equal to 11. So similarly. Moving on to next question, how will you delete indices, rows and columns from data frame? So to delete indices, so when I mean indices, so let's say this is the example of your data frame and you need to delete, let's say, names. Okay, and you should get this output. So what you can do is you can take the index name, so which you can get by df.index.name. So you can use del keyword to do that or set that value to null. Okay, so for example, this is the data frame, and to drop the index name names, what you do is you do df.index.name to none, or you can do del, and in that case your output would be like this. Now to delete row and column from data frame, we can use data.drop. So this is the example. We'll come to this in a second. So we can use data.drop. So data would be the data frame that you want to delete from. And in that we have three parameters. So first is label. So it would basically be rows or column names, whatever we have. So that would be decided upon the axis. So if your axis you are setting it to 1, it would technically take them to be columns. And if you set axis to 0, then it would drop rows for whatever labels that you have given. Now this in place is basically so that we do not do extra operations. So let's look at what we are doing is drop method is used to delete. The access argument is passed to drop method. If the value is 0, then it indicates row. If value is 1, then we indicate column. We can try to delete rows and columns in place. So this in place would basically when it is true, this makes that we do not do any reassignment. And if there are duplicate values from row and column, it can be deleted using drop duplicates method. Moving on to question number 57, can you get items of series A that are not available in another series B? So for example, let's say your first series contains 2, 4, 8, 10 and 12, and your second series contain 8, 12, 10 and 10, 15 and 16. What your expected output is that we should get 2 and 4 because 8, 10 and 12 are present in second series. So is there any way we can do that? So yeah, we can do that with the help of not or negation symbol and with the help of isn't function. So what we are doing is here we are creating two data frames from the series that we have, and in those what we are initially doing is we are doing is in so df1 dot is in df2. So what this would do is we are checking what elements of df1 are present in df2. So this highlighted one would give 8, 12 and 10 because they are present in df1, and we are doing negation of it. So leaving these elements, we are taking other one. So we'll get 2 and 4. So we are just taking that df and printing that. Okay. Moving on to question number 58. How will you get items that are not common to both the given series A and B? So our expected is, so let's say we have first series 2, 4, 5, 8 and 10, and other series is 8, 10, 13, 15 and 17. So what we are expecting is that the common element should be dropped completely. So what we should get it 2, 4 and 5. 8 and 10 are present in both, so rest would be 13, 15 and 17. So we should get 2, 4, 5, 13, 15 and 17. So it is basically saying that not of intersection of A and B. So we can achieve this by performing union of both the series first and then taking intersection of both series. Then we follow the approach of getting items of union that are not there in list of the intersection. So the code of that would look like we are creating two data frames from the series that we have. Then we are using Numpy, which we'll be looking at in next section. So for union and intersection. So what we do is we create series by taking union of those two data frames and then taking an intersection of same two data frames. Okay. So in P union, we have union of df1 and df2, that is both of them. And in P intersect, we have just the common part, which is the white one. Now, after this, what we do is when we need the final, that is only in A or only in B, we do from the P union, what we do is what we just did in the previous question, that is in and then negation of that. Okay, so we just do union, whatever elements are present in union and in the intersection. So this would be the output of this selected item, and then negation of that would be the yellow part. So that is what we are printing and we are getting the final result. Moving on to question number 59. While importing data from different sources, can Pandas library recognize date? So they can do that, but there could be various format, right? So we need some help. So we need to add a parse dates argument while we are reading data from sources. Consider an example where we read data from CSV file. We may encounter different date time formats that are not readable by Pandas library. In this case, to provide flexibility, we need to build our own custom date parser with the help of Lambda function. So the example for that is we are importing Pandas and date time and we are creating a date parser with the help of Lambda. We are just stripping the elements of year, month, date and hour, minute and second with this. And then we are finally reading the CSV with a parameter called as parse date with the column name, and then date parser whatever we have generated. Moving to next section of this video, that is Numpy interview questions, Numpy library. Question number 60. What do you understand by Numpy? So Numpy is one of the most popular, easy to use, versatile, open source, Python based general purpose package that is used for processing arrays. So only thing that is important is processing array. Numpy is short for numerical Python. This is very famous for highly optimized tool that result in high performance and powerful n-dimensional array processing feature that is designed explicitly to work on complex arrays. Due to its popularity and powerful performance and its flexibility to perform various operations like trigonometric operations, algebraic, statistical computation, it is most commonly used in performing scientific computation and various broadcasting functions. Following image shows the application of Numpy: arithmetic, broadcasting, bitwise operators, stacking, matrix operations, searching, sorting, counting, mathematical operation, copying and viewing arrays, statistical operation, linear algebra, etc. Question number 61. How are Numpy arrays advantageous over Python lists? So list data structure of Python is very highly efficient and is capable of performing various functions, but they have severe limitation when it comes to computation of vectorized operation, which deals with element-wise multiplication and addition. The Python list also require the information regarding the type of every element, which results in overhead as type dispatching code gets executed every time any operation is performed on any element. Now, this is where Numpy arrays come into picture, as all the limitation of Python lists are handled by Numpy arrays. Additionally, as the size of Numpy array increases, Numpy becomes around 30 times faster than the Python list. This is because Numpy arrays are densely packed in memory due to their homogeneous nature. This ensures the memory free up is also a lot faster. Next question is, what are steps to create 1D, 2D, 3D and ND array? So for 1D array creation, we are creating a list, and then we are using a function numpy.array. So alias is np here, so we'll be using np everywhere. So we are just doing numpy.array and we are passing one dimensional list. For creating a two-dimensional list, here we are creating a nested list with multiple list inside a list, and we use again the same function, that is empire dot empire, what is empire, numpy np dot array, and then we are passing the same list with the two-dimensional values in it. Similarly, for three-dimensional also, we create a three level nested list, and we pass that to numpy dot array. So otherwise they are just printing after creating that an array creation. And similarly, if we have nd array creation, this can be achieved by giving the nd min attribute. The below example demonstrates the creation of 6-dimensional array. So we are creating an nth dimensional array by passing what is the, let's say, what is the dimension that we want to create to the variable nd min. Okay, after that we are just doing a numpy dot array, the list and then the dimension, we are just printing that. And we can also get to know the dimension of that nd array by doing nd array dot ndim. Question number 63. You are given a numpy array and a new column as input. How will you delete the second column and replace the column with a new column value? So we are given a numpy array as below, and we need to delete the second column, that is this column. Sorry, this is the row. So we need to delete 53, 12 and 84 and replace it with the new column. So the new column is like 20, 30 and 40. So the solution is that we initially create an so this is a two-dimensional list. So we create a two-dimensional array. So this is a two-dimensional array, and we are creating a new array with the, what we say, new element, new column values. Okay, first is creating a two-dimensional array and then creating a two-dimensional array again for the new column. Then we delete it with the help of numpy.delete, and we are passing from which array we need to delete and what is the index of it. Okay, so this is the index and what is the axis. So we saw it during drop in the previous section, that is if axis is 1, we are saying column. Okay, and to insert we use function numpy.insert, and then where do we need to insert, what is the index and what is the new column that we need to add, and then the axis specifies column wise or row wise, and then we are just printing it. Question number 64. How will you effectively load data from a text file? So we can use method numpy.loadtxt, which can automatically read the file's header and footer lines and the comments if any. This method is highly efficient, and even if this method feels less efficient, then data should be represented in a more efficient format such as CSV, etc. Various alternatives can be considered depending on version of NumPy used. So following are the file formats that are supported. So text file, raw binary, pickle file. Pickle is for serialization and deserialization. HDFI and .npy. So text files are slow and huge but portable. Then we have raw binary, which does not have any metadata but are not portable but are very fast and efficient. Pickle are the borderline slow and portable but depends on NumPy versions for saving the objects into file. HDF5 is high powered kitchen sink format, which I am also hearing it for first time, which support both pi tables and H5py format. And NumPy's native binary format, which is extremely simple, efficient and portable. .npy. Question number 65. How will you read CSV data into an array in NumPy? So this can be achieved by using generate from txt function or method, because it is inside the class, by setting the delimiter as comma. Now this is basically reading as text and CSV is comma separated value, so that is what we are doing. We are importing generate from text, gen from text function from NumPy, and we are passing which file we need to read and delimiter to be common. Question number 66. How will you sort the array based on nth column? So for example, consider an array ARR. So which is this. Now let us try to sort the rows by second column so that we get this. So in this 3, 6 and 1 is sorted according to this, I mean this column. The rest of the things get, so this comes first, this row, then next is this, we are getting this, and finally we are having this. So we can do this by using sort method in NumPy. So we are just initially creating a NumPy array with the given list of list, and then we are doing a sort. I actually did not get why did they do array.view. I did look up the documentation, which is just like initial parameter is just what array is to be sorted, but I'm not sure what they have done here. After that, they are just putting an order equal to f1, which basically states that this argument specifies which field to compare first, second, etc. A single field can be specified as string, and not at all fields can be specified, but those will anyway be used based on the data type. Okay, and finally we have the axis, which specifies that it specifies along which we need to sort. If none is if none, the array is flattened before sorting. The default is -1. Okay, so here we need to do for the second. So I think we are doing it 0. So first is -1 and second is 0, and then we are doing view dot np dot end. So that's it. We can also perform sorting, and that too in place sorting by doing array dot view. This is the same thing that they are doing, but I'm not sure why. Then we are doing a sort with the order and the access to be 0. Moving on to question number 67. How will you let me know in comment section below if you get anything or understand this. Okay, so question number 67. How will you find the nearest value in given NumPy array? So we can use argmin method of NumPy as shown below. So what we are basically doing is, if we have multiple values and we need to find the nearest value to some particular value, we can take a absolute difference between those and apply a argmin function to that. So this is the driver code. Basically we are calling find nearest value function by taking array and value and passing it to the function. Here we are converting it to a NumPy array, and then we are taking absolute value for array and the value, okay, for every element, and then doing an argmin and returning returning that particular element which gives the lowest difference. Question number 68. How will you reverse the NumPy array using one line of code? So this can be done with the help of slicing sort of thing. So we can do reversed array and array of start, stop and step. So it would basically be -1 sort of thing. So here array is the original and reverse array is the resultant array, and this actually returns a copy. So we are assigning it to reversed array. Question number 69. How will you find the shape of any given NumPy array? So we can do that with the with the shape attribute with NumPy array dot shape, and we'll get that. To find the shape, it returns the shape of the array in the terms of row count and column count of that array. So we are creating a two-dimensional array with np dot array, and we are creating a one-dimensional array, and then we are just printing those two by taking the shape attributes, and we'll get 2 comma 4 and 5 elements, as we have just uh, one-dimensional array with 5 elements in it. Next section, what we have is Python library interview questions. So these are some basic libraries. Differentiate between a package and module in Python. I think we saw what package and modules are. Anyways, so module is a single Python file. A module can import other modules, other Python files as object, whereas a package is a folder / directory where different sub packages and modules reside. A Python module is created by saving a file with .py extension. This file have classes, functions that are reusable in code as well as across modules. Now Python package is created by following step: create a directory, give valid name, place modules of one kind in that particular directory, and create a init.py file. There are 2 underscore before and after. This lets know Python that the directory we are created is a package, and the contents of this package can be imported across different modules in other packages to reuse functionality. Question number 71: what are some most commonly used built-in modules in Python? So most commonly used files having Python code which can be functions, variable, classes. These go by .py extensions. The most commonly available built-in modules are OS, operating system, math, sys, system. These are for system calls, random, RE for regular expression, date, time, and JSON, etc. What are lambda function? We saw what lambda functions are, right? Lambda functions are generally inline anonymous functions represented by single expression. They are used for creating functions object during runtime. They can accept any number of parameters. They are usually used where functions are required only for short period of time. I remember we have saw this. We just we can use it as a variable or inside a function, and you can check the above question. So we need to put a lambda and whatever expression that we need to put. Moving on to next question: how can you generate random numbers? So Python provides a module called random, using which we can generate random numbers. So we have to import a random module and call random function inside it. So the random function generate float value lying between 0 and 1 randomly. So we just import random and we do random dot random, that is the function inside random. To generate customized random numbers between specified ranges, we can use the rand range method. Syntax: rand range, we input beginning and end and then step. For example, if we need to uh, put a random number between 5 and 100 and only in the steps of 2, that is 5, 7, etc., then we can do this particular thing. Question number 74: can you easily check if all characters in given string is alphanumeric? So this can easily be done with the help of function is_al_num method that returns true in case the string has only alphanumeric characters. So this would return true, whereas this would return false because we have at the rate and dollar symbol. Another way is to use match method from regex module as shown, that is RE, regular expression. So we import regex and then we print bool of regular expression dot match, and this is the regular expression from the string what we have, whatever we want to put. So this will return true, this will return false. What are differences between pickling and what is happening, man? We saw this also. I remember this definitely. We saw this question. uh I will not go into details. So pickling is a way of serializing. So we use pickle.dump, and to do the reverse process, that is from file to Python object, we do pickle.load. Moving on to question number 76, define GIL. GIL stand for Global Interpreter Lock. This is a mutex used for limiting access to Python objects and aids in effective thread synchronization by avoiding deadlocks. Now, it helps in achieving multitasking, not parallel computing, but multitasking. Now, parallel computing is doing things in parallel. Multitasking is from this, we shift to some other thing, then we shift to some other thing, that is multitasking. The following diagram represents how GIL work, that is Global Interpreter Lock. So if any particular thread works on it, it takes the lock, and when it is done, it releases the lock, and some other thread acquires the access for that lock. And then when it is done, then some other runs, then when it releases, some other takes, acquires that lock, etc. Now, based on above diagram, there are three threads. First thread acquires the GIL first and then starts input output execution. When input output execution are done, thread 1 releases it and then taken up by second thread. The process repeats and GIL are used by different threads alternatively until the threads have completed their execution. The threads not having the GIL lock goes into the waiting state and resume execution only when it acquires the lock. Now define Python part we have covered already, so I will not be doing that again. So it is basically to import module or packages other than the current directory what we have. So we can we do not which needs to be loaded, and interpreter uses this environment variable to identify which module needs to be loaded at what time and what precedence, etc. Question number 78, define pip. Pip stand for Python installer package. As the name indicates, it is used for installing different Python modules, and it is a command line tool providing seamless interface for installing different Python modules. So it searches over the internet for Python packages and install them into working directory without the need of any interaction with the user. So the syntax is pip install and the package name. Similarly, is uninstall, we can do pip uninstall the package name. Are there any tools for identifying bugs and performing static analysis in Python? Yes, there are tools like PyChecker and PyLint, which is used as static analysis and linting tools respectively. PyChecker helps find bugs in Python source code files and raises alerts for code issues and their complexity. Now, PyLint checks for modules coding standard and support different plugins to enable custom features to meet their requirements. Question number 80, differentiate between deep and shallow copies. We saw this also, man. Shallow copy does this task of creating new object. I mean, it copies but does not copy the references, whereas in deep copy, we do copy the references as well. We even saw the example in the previous one. Question number 81, what is main function in Python? How do you invoke it? So in the world of programming, main is considered as the entry point for execution of program. But in Python, it is known that the interpreter serially interprets file line by line. This means that Python does not provide main function explicitly, but we can create it. But this doesn't mean that we cannot simulate the execution of main. This can be done by defining a user-defined main function by using the name property, that is underscore. There are two underscore before and after property of Python file. This name variable is a special built-in variable that points to a name of the current module. This can be done as shown below. So we define a main function and then we do print whatever we want to do, and we do if name is equal to underscore underscore main. In that case, we call the main function. So this is the way of doing it. And finally we are in the last section with Python programming examples. Question number 82, write Python function which takes a variable number of arguments. So we saw this when we have to pass variable number of arguments, we just do star and args. Okay, it would basically be a kind of list sort of thing. So we do star var and we are doing something and we are passing whatever we want to pass. Write a program which takes a sequence of numbers and check if all numbers are unique. So we can use a set for that. So basically create a set with this list of elements and check. So set basically have unique elements for whenever we add a what we say duplicate element, it does not add anything, it just rejects that element. So we are checking if length of data list is equal to length of the set that we created. If it is so, we return true, else we return false. We can also do it with the help of check distinct function, and it would return a boolean if it has duplicates or not. Question number 84, write a program for counting the number of every character of a given text file. I did not understand it clearly. Okay, the idea is to use collection and pprint module as shown below. So we are importing both of those. We are opening the file as data. Okay, and then what we are doing is we are doing collection.counter data.read dot upper. Okay, and after that we are doing pprint. So it is pretty print. It prints it in a better way. Prettyprint.p format, then count data, which is count value, and then we are printing the value. Okay, so we are counting the number of characters in the given text. So let's say how many times A came up, how many times B came up, how many times C came up, something like that. We are reading it, making it uppercase so that it does not differentiate small a and greater A. And then we are just printing that. Okay, great. Moving on to question number 85, write a program to check and return the pair of a given array A whose sum value is equal to a target value N. This can be easily done with the using of phenomenon of hashing. We can use a hash map to check for current value of array, and if it maps to, this is a two-sum problem. Yeah, it is first problem on LeetCode. Go check that. You will solve this very easily. We are using a hash map to check if its counter is present in the particular hash map. If we have not seen that, we are just adding it to hash. That's what we are doing for every element. We are checking if it is present in hash set. If it is present, we are printing that, else we are adding the current element. Question number 86, write a program to add two integers greater than 0 without using a plus operator. Okay, this is an interesting one. So we can use bitwise operator. So what we do is, like, we iterate till one of the number is empty. So in this case, they have taken num2 is not equal to empty. We iterate till then. And what we do is we store we do an AND operation on both of the numbers and do it save it in a temp variable, and then we do an OR operation on the same two numbers, num1 and num2, and store it in num1, and after that we do a left shift on our temp variable, that is data in this case, and that will get num2. So once we have num2 is 0, in that case what we do, we return the other number, that is num1, it will be the sum. And this is, we are just calling the function and printing it. Moving on to question number 87, write a program to solve the given equation assuming that a, b, c, m, n and 0 are constants. So we have two equations, ax plus by equal to c and mx plus ny equal to 0. By solving the equation we get, so as a, these are constant, so it does not matter what we take, so we can take anything, and what we can do is we can take constants of one and multiply it by other equations, so that they get cancelled out and we can separate the variables from the constants and make it to the other side. So that is what we are doing. We are taking a temp variable and doing a, which is the constant of x, multiplied by n, and we are subtracting it from b multiplied by m. Okay, so this would be basically one side operations, that on dividing it would go into denominator. So we will be checking if n is not equal to 0, because if n equal to 0, then there would be no point. So in that case what would happen is, we'll get x by c into n minus b into o divided by the temp that we just created, and similarly for y we do a into o minus m into c divided by temp, and we just print them. Moving on to question number 88, write a program to match a string that has a letter A followed by 4 to 8 B's. Okay, so whenever there is a match a string, we use a regular expression, that is regex. So we import re. So we are asked that we need A followed by 4 to 8 B's. Okay, it could be 4 B's or 5 B's or 6 B's or 7 B's or 8 B's. Okay, so what the pattern is, the regular expression for this would be a, and b, the count of numbers that b comes to be is 4 to 8 times. Okay, now what we do is, from the regular expression we have a function called as search, where for which we pass the pattern, and for which for what is the string that we need to compare it with. Now if we get it, we just return match found, else what we do, match not found. So then we are just calling that function match text with some of the strings. Okay, question number 89, write a program to convert date from YYMMDD format to DDMMYY format. So in this we can again use a regular expression module, and what we could do is, we could do re.sub, and this is the regular expression for year, month and date. That is, we have 4 characters for date, sorry, year, then we have 2 characters for month and 2 characters for date. Okay, and in that case, after that we just input the date and we call this function. We can also use date time module, that is, we import date time from date time, and we use strp time function. In that we pass the first, that is the input we are given, and then we specify what is the formatting given and to what format we need to format it to. Okay, so and then we just print the new data. Question number 90, write a program to combine two different dictionaries. While combining, if you find the same keys, you can add the values of the same keys, output the new dictionary. So we are importing counter from collection package. Now we are creating two dictionaries, key 1, key 2, key 3. and key 4 in dictionary 2, and they have some different values. So we just do new dictionary equal to counter of d1 plus counter of d2, and we just print the new dictionary. Question number 91, which is the final question of this. This has been a very long video. Now, how will you access the dataset of publicly shared spreadsheet in CSV format stored in a Google Drive? So we can use string IO module from IO module to read from Google Drive link, and then we can use Pandas library to use library for using the obtained data source. So we are importing string IO and Pandas. We give the CSV link, and then we do string input function. We use string io function, which takes in a request, and we do request.get csv link dot content. And then finally, whatever data source we have, we are just reading it with the pandas.read csv function. And we are doing head, which basically specifies the top 5 entries in that. So that's all the questions for Python. We covered all the modules, and hope you liked this video. If you found something interesting or this was helpful in your revision, hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe if you need more such interview content, lead code questions, or simple interview experiences. Do subscribe to the channel, and that's all. I'll see you in the next one.